Hello, welcome back to Hazel Jane Tarot, and today I'm going to do a VR, and this is to the Boy Diviner, and it's a hashtag cardstock snob. I just thought it was a really fun tag, and so if you can recognize the backs of the decks in front of you, these are some of my top favorite decks for cardstock. So unlike a lot of people seem to, when they're picking their favorite cardstock, it's a lot of independently produced decks. There will be a few of those here today, but sometimes I think independently produced decks go overboard in terms of the thickness and like the finish on their cards, and then they're not as actually as easy to work with as some of the mass-produced cardstock. So this deck is the Herb Crafter's Tarot, and this is US Games. And one of the things that's really important to me in cardstock is that I'm able to thumb through a deck like this. So say if I'm studying a particular card, or I'm looking for a card to have out on an altar as a focus point or something like that, I need to be able to go through the deck face up. And so the cards have to be able to slide past each other for me to be able to do that. So this US Games cardstock, it just, see the way it just doesn't clump at all. The cards just slide really effortlessly past each other. It makes it a lovely cardstock to shuffle and work with and hold and fan. You can fan the whole deck out really easily, and it's just gorgeous. So I actually think this US Games cardstock is one of my favorite cardstocks that I've handled. I don't know if all US Games decks are exactly the same in terms of cardstock, but that's a really good one. Another mass market deck I recently got that has beautiful cardstock, really easy to handle, is this Nicoletta Ciccoli Tarot. Again, it's really easy to thumb through. The cards just slide past each other. They waterfall and fan really beautifully. I find riffle shuffling a bit challenging at times, just with my hands aren't great, but I do sometimes riffle the corners of a deck like that and shuffle it together that way. Bridging, I'm not so hot on, so I'm not even going to attempt to demonstrate that on camera. But this is lovely cardstock. I actually quite like it if there's a bit of flex in a card, so that they bend and shuffle fairly easily. So that is a Lo Scarabeo deck, and I really like the cardstock on that one as well. You'll have seen I had this sitting out at the beginning. This is the Spirit Keeper's Tarot by Benabel Wen, and I think this is kind of known to have really, really luxury cardstock. Obviously, it has this really nice gilding. They're not super bent, they don't feel fragile, but they're not stiff, but they bend enough. The thing that's lovely with this deck is it has a particular kind of a matte finish that has a lovely, I think it's the combination of the gilt edging and the matte finish that gives it a really lovely sound. Once again, it's a slightly thicker deck, so it's slightly thicker in my hand to thumb through, but listen to that. So that's just gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous cardstock. So the Spirit Keeper's Tarot is definitely up there with the very best cardstock, in my opinion. And one other deck that I think this might actually be my favorite cardstock. This is the Dreamkeeper's Tarot. And this, unlike the kind of shuffly noise that you get from the Spirit Keeper's Tarot, this deck is it's like butter. It's really soft, and I don't know how to explain that, but how that a card can feel soft. It is flexible. It's not edged or anything, but there's a lovely, there's almost no sound as you page through this deck. They slide over each other absolutely beautifully when you're shuffling or to fan it out. And they're lovely. They're really slippery in a nice way. And the size is great. Like, this is just a standard tarot size card. Whereas it's very similar in size to, just maybe very marginally bigger than, like millimeters wider than the that Lo Scarabeo mass market deck. So I'm actually, I think because my hands would sometimes struggle with stiff cardstock, and with bigger cards, these are really nice size to handle. So I actually think my very top favorite cardstock is this, the Dream Keepers Tarot, with the Spirit Keepers Tarot, very highly rated as well. And then the mass market decks of the Chicoli Tarot by Lo Scarabeo, the US Games, Herb Crafters Tarot also have really favourite cardstock for me. But basically any deck that I can shuffle easily, that the cards slide past each other smoothly, and that it's flexible, is good for me. So some decks then, just to, on the flip side, that I find the cardstock harder to handle and I'm not as keen on. Here is a good example. This is an independently produced version of the Lightseers Tarot, and I absolutely adore the Lightseers Tarot. It is one of my favourite decks in terms of its imagery. It's chunky. So compared to, let me just see, so compared to, say, the mass market, Lo Scarabeo deck, you can see like the Lightseers Tarot is a lot thicker. And I think that's actually the source of my problems. It's only very slightly wider, and very marginally taller. So, you know, the actual card size isn't a pile bigger, it's the thickness that's the issue. So it's harder to hold the whole deck in your hand. But so this is the issue, trying to thumb through this deck is difficult. They are a little bit clumpy when you try to waterfall them, you know. And so they don't fan easily. They're okay to shuffle, but I feel like I really have to do a lot more small, a lot more sort of smaller grabs, and as I'm doing the overhand shuffle. I do corner riffle them, I can just about manage that, but there's no way I would be able to, and you see they're sticky, trying to put them back in between each other, so there's no way I'd be able to bridge this deck. It's too thick and too stiff. So this is what I mean with, sometimes I think independent producers, like in trying to make a really firm card, you know, it's just that little bit thicker than is practical to work with. So that's the independent version. I have thought actually about getting the mass market version of this to see if it's any easier to work with, but yes, I do love that deck. It's just, it's very very thick. And on a similar note, the Moonchild Tarot, oh, it's fallen out of the box. The Moonchild Tarot is harder even again for me to work with, because it's even thicker, I think, if that is, yeah. So it's a little tiny bit thicker, but the cards are also bigger, you know, relative to there. That's the Chicoli Tarot, so they're quite a lot bigger. And for me, this makes them difficult to overhand shuffle, because they're quite big. I can just about manage it without turning it sideways, and they are impossible to thumb through. If I was looking for a particular card, I have to just lift half the deck at a time to try, and they, you know, I have to really use a lot of force with my thumb to slide them along. I mean, and it's such gorgeous artwork, but yeah, it's just the thicker, larger cards I find a little bit harder to work with. And those both have a matte finish. Something a little bit different is this Red Feather mass market produced deck, The Spirit Within Tarot, which is another gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous artwork. Once again, it's a little bit thicker than like there's the Lo Scarabeo deck. So it's a little bit thicker cardstock, and it shuffles fine. You can see it's shinier, which I know some people don't like a glossy finish, particularly for photographing cards and things like that. But the shiny finish, it's a little bit sticky. So, you know, as I'm thumbing through it, like there's resistance as I'm trying to move the cards, and they're a bit clumpy, you know, you can see as I try to waterfall them. So I know, I think some people did suggest that on a shiny deck like this that's a bit sticky, fanning powder would help. I've never used fanning powder, so I'm kind of a bit worried of buying the wrong thing and destroying the deck, which is, you know, this is a lovely deck. And, you know, it doesn't put me off working with the Lightseers Tarot or the Spirit Within Tarot, but maybe with the Moonchild it does put me off working with it a little bit because they're just so big. But yes, my favourite kinds of decks are these. Ooh, lovely slidey. And maybe just like I do have, I know I've mentioned about my hands, be better to be a bit more clear, I suppose. I do have arthritis, and that can affect me with my hands. So that's maybe why I just find the slightly smaller and easier to shuffle and easier to move around decks better. So there you go. That's my VR to the Boy Diviner, my cardstock snob hashtag. I would be really interested to hear if any of these are your favorites or what is it that makes or break good cardstock for you. I'll link Casper's video below, and yeah, if you do your own response to this one, let me know in the comments so I can come and watch it. All right, thanks. Bye.